So maybe your partner told you that we just lost that spark. We're just maybe too different for each other. We're not meant for each other. And that she doesn't really feel anything in this relationship anymore. And that can be the most painful things for you to hear. And it's painful because if you look at a lot of the material on this topic, a lot of people will assign this to some mysterious reason why you guys grow apart, why that spark was gone, why she doesn't feel that spark anymore. And if something is a mystery like that, it just seems like magic. You either got it or you don't. And if you don't got it, there's really nothing you can do to create it because it's some mysterious thing that you're trying to create. Now in this video, I want to deconstruct the spark that people talk about in a much more scientific way. And this is crucial because once you can deconstruct it in a more scientific way like this, you can really begin to not only understand how to create it, but recreate it for many decades of your relationship. And this has been done with thousands of my clients to date, and I think it'll be mind-blowing for a lot of you here. So the first thing you need to do to recreate that spark in your marriage is to liquefy your identity. And I know this sounds like a really big word, but let me break it down for you. So it starts with this quote: "True power and freedom is not about being who you are and avoiding being who you're not. True power and freedom is about becoming whoever you need to become to accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish." So to give you an example of how rigid people's personalities are and why that creates some problems here is, imagine you are someone who is very masculine, no feminine sides. Your personality is great and is perfectly suited for work life. But when you come home, when you have to talk gently and softly to your kids, when you have to become this maybe seductive, romantic character with your wife at home, a lot of men struggle with that. So their personality has been rigid and is tailor-made for work life, but it's not tailor-made for romantic life, to be a great dad, etc. But when you learn to liquefy your character, what happens is you can start to mold yourself to thrive at work, but when you come home, you can just change your character and take whatever form you need to become a great, gentle dad. And then when you go to the bedroom with your wife, you can now also mold yourself to become that seductive, romantic character as well. And you will feel comfortable and at home throughout all these three stages. And so this is really the essence of what it means to liquefy your identity. It's learning how to become whoever you need to become to be successful at whatever it is you need to be successful at. And this is really the essence of what true power and freedom is. And if you guys are a fan of Bruce Lee, you will hear him say the quote, "Be like water." And this is really what he means. Liquefy your character. And we showed you why this is actually very crucial in the previous video that we had. So imagine again this big circle. This big circle represents everything that you can appreciate in life. This is all the topics in life. But let's say you have a very rigid personality. What happens is that you are a small circle within this bigger circle and your circle doesn't move. It's just there. And so if, let's say, your partner is exactly the same as you with the exact same interests, then no problem. But eventually, like we talked about, as we go through different life stages, you and your partner may shift a little bit. And as you shift, the intersection of similarities between the two of you will become smaller and smaller. And that's really the recipe of why your marriage becomes stale eventually. Is that as this intersection becomes smaller and smaller, the things you can share together become smaller and smaller. And after 5 years of this, 10 years of this, you can imagine how this can lead to a lot of staleness in that relationship. And as we continue to grow apart, we begin to also see how this can create a lot more unresolved differences that causes you guys to butt heads a lot, to fight a lot, to argue a lot, especially when you're arguing over differences that threaten your sense of identity. But again, we talked about this in depth in our previous video. So if you haven't watched that video, then click the link above my head or also down below this video to understand why this is so crucial. But if you learn to be fluid, if I learn to move my circle in whatever direction it needs to move to fit whatever situation I need to become for that particular moment, then you can see how the relationship can never really become stale because we can never really run out of things to talk about. If my partner wants to talk about makeup or her fashion or her homemaking, I can find myself being interested, appreciating all those topics. And you can see here also how we can never really grow apart because if my partner were to shift her personality, shift her identity because of whatever lifestyles or experiences she has, I can also shift according to it. And it's also easier to imagine how we can never really have an unresolvable difference that creates us a big fight. Because again, if I have a fluid identity, I really have no identity here. So if my partner were to say something that I disagree with, I'm not gonna see it as a big threat because there's no identity to threaten. So like I always said to my clients, you cannot really shoot water. If you become water, the bullet will just pass right through you. You will never really get offended. You will never really get upset at whatever it is your partner says or believes, etc. Now, the common misconception I think a lot of you may be thinking about at this point is, does this make me ingenuine? Is me shifting my identity every hour or so? Who am I exactly then? So let me ask you this question. Imagine your partner one day tells you, hey, let's go to Sephora. I need to buy some makeup. But you have been so rigid in your likes and dislikes that you say to yourself, I have zero interest in makeup. So you take your stance and you say, I'm a man who doesn't like to talk or look or be exposed to makeup things. That's not a manly thing to do. But you begrudgingly decide to go anyway. So you go in a begrudging way. So that's what a lot of people would think as genuine. It's someone having a very solid sense of identity of who they are and who they're not. But take another person who is able to be fluid. And if their partner says, let's go to the makeup store, they say, yeah, I can learn to like makeup. I can learn to love and appreciate makeup. And he goes willingly. Which of these two are more genuine? Most people would say the second one, because he's actually wanting to go there willingly, while the other one is going begrudgingly. Do you see the difference here? Genuineness has nothing to do with being who you are or not. But in fact, when you can be fluid in your character, you become more genuine in more times, in more places, in more moments than if you're rigid. And so this is why we have a whole section in our program on how to liquefy your identity. And the first step to liquefying your identity is really what we call unjamming your mind, which brings us to the second stage, which is what we call unjamming your mind and antithetic thinking. So to understand this one, I want you to imagine a scale. And the scale represents a belief or opinion you have about something, a certain topic in life. And every thought and every experience and every interpretation that we have about those experiences is basically us stacking rocks on one or the other side of the scale. So we're weighing the scales down. And for me, for example, when I was younger, I was actually bullied a lot. And I was bullied a lot by people who were extroverts, who were loud and brash. And so I started to stack a lot of rocks on the negative side of extroversion. And I became very introverted in essence. And the catch here is that once these scales are tipped to one side or the other, it tends to tip even more in the same direction. So because I stacked a lot of rocks on the side of the scale that is introverted and no rocks on the side of the scale that is extroverted, I really believed introversion was better. I hung around with people who are introverted. I scoffed at people who are extroverted. I judged them a lot. And so every thought I have about that topic results in me adding more and more rocks to the side of the scale that I already had rocks in. And when you have enough rocks on one side of the scale, that is what we call in our program when you're jammed to one side. Like you can try to pull the other side, but there's so much weight here that it just becomes jammed. You're jammed to that side. Now imagine the scale happening for every single topic, every single thing that exists in life. That's a lot of scales. And that's a lot of opinions that we have jammed ourselves on. And you can see how this creates a lot of the same problems that we talked about before, where your relationship becomes more and more stale, where you increase the chances of you guys butting heads and having an unresolvable difference, where it creates this culture where both of you are judging each other more and more and more over the key differences that you have from each other. But if you learn to unjam your mind, then again, the relationship can never really become stale. Because whatever it is you want to talk about, whatever it is people want to talk about, I can appreciate, I can like, I can enjoy, I can appreciate the other side, and I can stack rocks on either side of this scale. You know, it's almost like you see some people who their sense of humor is so limited to a few things. Their sense of what they eat is so limited. Their sense of what they find to be good art, it's so limited. And so whenever you go hang out with this person, there's really nothing you can talk about. Because unless the thing you're talking about fits so perfectly with what they like, then it's a great conversation. But if not, you run out of things to say. So when you can learn to unjam your mind like this, you're basically opening up your mind to more things. And now you are creating an environment where your partner can feel free to share whatever it is she wants to share. And you can find yourself appreciating and liking and feeling comfortable in whatever situations you're in as well. And you can really see how this leads to how you guys can really grow apart anymore. Because if my partner were to one day stop liking the interest that we liked before and picks up another interest, I can learn to stack rocks on whatever scales I need and whatever sides of the scales I need to be able to appreciate, to be able to incongruency with her interest at that point in time. And you can see here how we can never really have an unresolvable difference because again, whatever personality or taste differences we have, we can really appreciate the differences that we have together. So how do you unjam your scales then? The first thing to do is just to see the danger of jammed scales. It's the danger of having too strong of opinions about something and wanting to assert your opinions on other people, the world, etc. And once you can see this danger, you open yourself up to actually stacking rocks on the other side of your jam scales. And we do this by what we call antithetic thinking. So most people are what we call hypothetic. They go about life always asking the question, how am I right? How is what I know? How is what I believe to be true, right, and justified? So for example, if you are going to go find a job, you're basically seeing if that job is you or not you. And you want to get more of the jobs that are you and less of what is not you. So you're always trying to find evidence of who you are today, what you know today, and why what you know today is right and justified, and to get more of what you want today. But the antithetic lifestyle is when we're always asking the question, how am I wrong? What am I missing? How is the other side right? What is the merit to the other side? And this is really how we stop stacking rocks on the side of the scale that we have that already has a lot of rocks, and how we begin to stack rocks on the other side of the scale to really begin to unjam ourselves. And this antithetic thinking needs to become your lifestyle. I did this with extroversion. So for a long time, I've been stacking the rocks on the side of the scale of introversion, but it wasn't until I started to ask myself, what am I missing by being so introverted? How am I wrong by being so introverted? What is the merit to actually becoming extroverted? That I started to stack rocks on the other side and unjam myself there. I did this with any political views, any artistic views, about anything in life really. I'm always trying to have balanced scales. I even did this with my lifestyle. I actually went nocturnal for a good 2 years because I wanted to see how is life like being nocturnal. And there's really endless possibilities of how you can be antithetic in life and how you can balance the scales. And as you start to balance more and more the scales, you become someone who can really appreciate about just about anything and everything in life. So again, going back to the example of that person who, whenever you go out with them, they can only eat a certain kind of food, or they can only watch a certain kind of movie, or they can only appreciate a certain kind of humor or comedy. Those kind of people are really crappy to be around. But imagine a person who, whatever comedy shows you watch, whatever movies you watch, whatever music you're listening to, they can find themselves appreciating everything you give them. Those are the people who are really great to be around, who are really easy to get along with. And that's kind of what we're trying to create here, is a person who can really appreciate everything and anything, and once you do that, you can really experience the richness that life and your relationship is actually giving you right now. The third step to recreating that spark is to develop what we call an anti-fragile internal state, but also external state as well. So in many of our videos, we talk about the 3 levels of fragility. Number 1, the first level is what we call the fragile state, almost like a vase where the more pressure, the more likely you're gonna break. The second level is what we call robust. Imagine a rock here, or a diamond. It looks strong, it seems strong, and with enough pressure, it's withstanding the pressure. But eventually with enough pressure, it shatters. Now the third level is what we call anti-fragile. It's the state where the more pressure you give something, the stronger that thing gets. It doesn't just withstand it, it gets stronger. So think of your human body. When you get sick, your human body gets stronger. It doesn't just withstand it, it gets actually stronger. And this philosophy of the 3 levels of fragility can be applied to not only your internal bulletproof state, but also your frameworks as well, or how you conduct your conversations, your interactions with your partner. So if you're a fragile state and you're getting a lot of resistance, a lot of very difficult and tough truths from your partner, you're going to say in your head, oh my gosh, I can't really take it anymore. This is really creating a lot of anxiety, a lot of sadness in me. I can't take this tough truths. So more pressure you get, the more you crumble. Most people are robust at best, where they get this tough truth and they tell themselves, it's tough, you gotta go through it, So they're trying to really try hard to just hold up this weight above their head, but they know that they're struggling here. Now, there's another group of people who are what we call anti-fragile, where the more resistance, the more tough truths they get, sometimes the happier they get. The more of the tough truth and the more resistance they actually want. So a great example of this is when I was driving a car one day with my partner and I told a joke to my partner that she got offended with. And a lot of men who are fragile, who are robust, will internally get upset at that. Why are you taking it so seriously? Just relax. But for me, I saw that resistance that she was giving me as a wonderful thing. This was her telling me perhaps some negative confirmation bias she has about me, something she has been harboring about me that led her to misunderstand my joke. And I could have asked her for every single day for 365 days straight. Is there anything that you're angry at me about? And she would never have told me that. But that was something she was harboring in herself that would eventually affect the relationship at one point or another. And the fact that she just gave me resistance, I saw that as a massive opportunity for me to uncover that, for me to understand it, for her to express it, and for us to turn what was a negative moment for most people into a positive moment for myself. And that is really the anti-fragile state. And this state of anti-fragility is actually crucial to create that safety that is so crucial in a relationship, both directly and also indirectly as well. So it can create safety directly in the sense of, imagine you told someone, your friend, your boss, some really difficult truth about themselves. Maybe they did something that to really hurt you and you express this to them. When you tell them that, you can see that they're thriving. They're happy that you told them. And they say to you, you know, I really appreciate that you can tell me this stuff because it really tells me a lot of the blind spots that I may have. And let's talk more about this so I can make sure that I don't hurt you in the same way ever again. Imagine how much safety that actually creates. While you contrast it with someone who is more fragile or robust and they get upset at it, they get upset at you for sharing with them some tough truth, that will destroy a lot of safety. And it can create safety indirectly as well. So you can imagine here if, let's say you told your boss some really difficult news and your boss is saying nice things, but you can tell that your boss is very panicked, seething inside. Can you feel safe with that person? Of course not, because indirectly you're seeing that even though, the person is saying the right things, internally I know they're barely surviving right now. And so again, this concept of anti-fragility is a crucial aspect to the creation of safety, which is a base pillar of every relationship. And if you really look at the journey of what it means to recreating spark, it involves you addressing the many layers of intense baggage, resentment, conflicts that destroyed the spark in the first place. So for example, for me, in the early parts of my relationship, my partner had to tell me that she actually never felt attraction for me. She felt very little attraction for me from the very beginning. And that was a very painful thing to hear. And if you're not in that anti-fragile state, you are not going to be able to thrive through that and turn that lemon into lemonade. And recreating spark also involves and requires that you talk about the most embarrassing, the most shameful sometimes, the most secretive things about each other. So for example, for me and my partner, we had to talk about why the sex together was really bad. And we had to talk about some very embarrassing details about what we do to each other, what we like, what our fantasies are, what we don't like, what we find a turn off, etc. That were very sensitive, they were sometimes very difficult to hear, but those conversations needed to happen. And there's a lot more very difficult resistances, tough truths, very difficult conversations that we need to go through, that if we do not have the anti-fragile state, we're going to be struggling through that. And I already made a video on the process of what it looks like to become anti-fragile yourself. So if you want to watch that video, click the link above my head or also down below this video as well. And the fourth skill you need to build to recreate spark is to develop a very systematic and principled way of thinking. Because you cannot resolve or align on something unless you understand what the root behind the problem is. So imagine if you go to a doctor one day and you go to the doctor because you're very sick and you feel really bad. And the doctor just tells you, oh, well, there's something wrong with your body right now. I don't know what it is, but it's something wrong with your body. Well, no shit, doc. I already know that. But can you actually trust the doctor in the instance to actually heal what you have? No, because the doctor doesn't even understand what the root of the problem is. And it's the same thing when your partner says to you, hey, I don't feel that spark for you anymore. I don't feel the same romantic feelings for you anymore. And you just say, well, I guess something's wrong then. I don't know what is wrong. It's just a mystery, I guess. That doesn't inspire any hope, doesn't inspire any trust. And you cannot begin to resolve anything if you're just happy and content with just a vague diagnosis like that. So what we teach our clients to do is that no matter how soft, no matter how difficult or mysterious the problem seems to be at first, we teach them to deconstruct that mystery. What are the scientific points or components of that problem? Once you break down the problem, find that bottleneck. And once you find the bottleneck, further break down the bottleneck and simplify the problem even more. And once you can identify the root core, then use your internal shifts and the frameworks as well to be able to lead a conversation, to pinpoint that bottleneck and to inspire that hope and safety for the partner that, hey, someone knows what they're doing, and actually deliver on whatever it is that you guys discussed over that conversation. And doing all this while at the same time creating safety along the way. And a great example of this was my client Spencer Davis. So when he came into the program, his wife wanted to divorce him because she wanted more children and he did not. And for a lot of people, that will be a irreconcilable difference that would result in usually a breakup. But when he looks at the problem, he says, okay, the problem really isn't that she wants children, but the deeper problem here is that she wants to feel it once again like she's nurturing something. It's the sense of nurturing that she wants to have. So there he broke down the problem, found the bottleneck. And once he can find the bottleneck, he can lead the conversations better to be talking about, okay, if the real problem is that you want to nurture something, then is there a way that we can find a win-win where you can feel like that part of yourself is fulfilled, but also what I want and need is also fulfilled as well. And they can start to have a much more mature discussion about that and find a win-win resolution eventually. And so in your relationship, you need to find the very specific diagnosis that is causing your relationship to lose spark. And that diagnosis cannot be vague. And once you find that root diagnosis, only then can you actually do something, can you actually guide the conversation to start healing the source of what lost that spark in the first place. And to do this, to learn how to systematically think and principles think like this, there's really no shortcuts to doing this. You have to understand the system of what makes up a good relationship very, very well. And you need to also understand the principles of that very, very well as well. So in our program, we ask our clients to make what we call a mental map. And this is a great way to organize all the information that our clients learn in the program in a very systematic and principled way that allows them to use those systems and principles thinking to then dive deeper and deconstruct the problem even better. And I know this sounds really hard to do, and a lot of our clients actually take 3 to 6 months to really understand how to do this properly. But this is something that you cannot escape doing, because if you are not able to diagnose your relationship in a systematic and principled way, when you have a problem in your relationship, you're not poised then to actually do something to fix the root problem and to find the win-wins. So if you don't learn how to do this, it's almost like you're in control of a ship right now, but you don't have the steering wheel. You don't know what levers to pull to actually steer the ship. And if that's the case, then you're just gonna let the waves take you wherever you want to go. You are in no control over where you're actually going. And so guys, if you want to learn more about all these 4 things that we talked about, then join me in my masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. In that masterclass, I'll show you the exact system and principles that all my clients have used, taken from a very dire situation where they've lost all spark to a thriving state in their marriage. So if you want to join me in that masterclass, click the link above my head or also down below this video. But for now, guys, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one.